Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I have a seed haul to share with you to show you some new varieties that I'm really excited to try out for 2024. And I'm pretty sure everything that I ordered this time is a new variety that I have not grown before, so it's gonna be really fun. I'm so excited to try some of these new vegetables and flowers out. And I do have a big box of things in here, which I'm going to explain. So first off, I placed a seed order with Baker Creek. And then I have a big box of seeds or beans from what is not technically like a seed company, but I will go more in depth about that later on. First off, I'm going to start with the seeds that I bought from Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds. I've ordered from them a lot in the past, and I did want to try out some new seed companies this spring, but by the time I got around to ordering my seeds, it was already pretty late, and I really just wanted to get my seeds ordered. And since Baker Creek is the website that I'm most familiar with, I know how to navigate their website. I just figured I would place another order with them. I do like their seeds, and their photography is really nice on their website, so that always gets us really excited to see nice photos of everything we're growing. So yeah, I just placed an order with them just because it was easiest. So yeah, let's get into the varieties that I chose. So the first two seeds are ones that you may have seen in our last video because I did already start these. These are onion seeds, and I have a yellow onion called Texas Early Grano. This is a short day onion. And then I have the Akatama Salad red onion. Sometimes on the packet they don't tell you if it's short, intermediate, or long day onions, and I wish they always did because that's pretty important. So I don't remember what these are, but based on where our location is, I'm sure I only bought them if they were a short or intermediate day onion. So yeah, I have a red onion and yellow onion that I'm adding to what we're growing this year. I already kind of talked all about onions in my last video, so if you want more info, you can go ahead and watch that video. But for now, I'm gonna move on. So next I have a few pumpkin seeds or winter squash seeds. This year, we are planning on repurposing our previous cut flower garden, and we're going to be doing a pumpkin patch there this year. At least we're going to try to do that. For the last year or maybe 2 years, I've kind of been neglecting that space. So any flowers that have grown, pretty much all of them are perennials or volunteers, and I haven't really put a lot of effort into there. It turns out flower gardening is a lot harder than I thought it would be, and I just didn't have the energy to put into that space. So what I'm thinking this year is that we're going to have a very low maintenance pumpkin patch. We've covered up the entire space with wood chips that we were able to get from our neighbor who was cutting down and shredding a lot of trees on their property. So we were able to cover the entire garden with wood chips, which is really nice because that'll help to suppress some of the weeds that have been growing there. And yeah, hopefully in the spring, I'm gonna add kind of piles or mounds of compost or soil, and we're gonna plant a few pumpkin seeds into each of those mounds, and hopefully the pumpkins will completely cover that space. And I'm thinking that it's going to be very low maintenance. I really want it to be something that I can kind of just plant the seeds and let them do their thing all season. That way it doesn't require a lot of effort from me, and hopefully we'll get some pumpkins in the end. And if we have too many, you can always use them for decorations in the fall, or we can feed them to our animals. For some of those winter squash and pumpkins, I am going to be using some of the existing varieties I have that I know that we like, but I thought this would be a really good opportunity to try out some new and fun pumpkins. But it's also pretty important to me that the pumpkins taste good as well, because I do want them to be multi-purpose. I want them to look nice and also for us to eat them. So the first one I chose is the Long Island cheese, and I chose this one because I really like the shape and kind of the color of it. It's this really pretty tan color that almost looks like it would be a matte color, and the flavor of this one's supposed to be really good. It says it's even good for pies, which tells you that the texture is a little bit drier and more flavorful, which is really great. And I just kind of like how the shape of it is kind of flatter and wider. I don't know why, but I really like that shape of pumpkins, which you can kind of tell by the next one that I chose, which also is a very similar shape, kind of flat and wide, but this one is a white pumpkin. The flesh inside is still orange, and this one also says it's good for pies and baking. So I think that one will be really pretty. I always really like white pumpkins. There's something very fairy tale-like about them. And then the last one that I picked out is the red curry squash, which is a Japanese winter squash. And I have heard that curry squash tastes really good, the flesh inside is really sweet. And I've seen these in stores before, but it's a little bit more of a specialty winter squash, so yeah, I thought that one would be fun, and it would be nice to go along with the other pumpkins that I chose, because this one is a very different shape. It's more of like a teardrop shape, whereas the other two I chose are kind of the same shape. So I thought it'd be nice to have a little collection of those. So those are the new pumpkins and winter squash that I chose to go into our new pumpkin patch area that we're going to be starting this year. Moving on, I have one pepper seed that I ordered and then one that I got for free with my order. So the first one is the Sugar Rush Peach Pepper, which is a hot pepper, but I think it's also supposed to have kind of like a sweet tropical flavor. So I think that'll be a really fun hot pepper to grow. I think this is on the hotter end of the kinds of peppers that we've grown in the past, but if it's too hot for us to use in cooking, I can always make like a hot sauce with them. And I just think they're really pretty. They kind of remind me of like habanero peppers in color, and the description kind of sounds like them too, saying that they're tropical. Then I also received a free seed packet of another kind of pepper, which actually looks very similar to the one I ordered. This is the one I ordered, and then this is the one I got for free. So this one is called the Ditil pepper. This one though says it is blazing hot, vicious heat, complex fruity flavor. So this one sounds a little bit scary. I'm not really sure if I'm gonna grow this one because it does sound really hot. Maybe I'll just do one plant and then we'll try it out, and then again I can turn it into a hot sauce. But it does look pretty similar to the Sugar Rush Peach, so I don't know how many hot peppers we really want to do. I'll have to decide on that one later on. All right, so then I got another free seed packet because I placed a pretty big order this time, so I got 2 free seed packets. This one is a type of lettuce called Yedikul. This one is from Istanbul, Turkey. It's a romaine type with long leaves. It's always nice to have lettuce seeds in my collection. So next I needed to restock on bok choy seeds because I'm almost out of mine, but I did want to try a different variety. The one I've grown in the past is like a Shanghai bok choy, kind of like green stalks, but my favorite type of bok choy to buy from the store are the bok choy with the white stalks. I think they're a little bit sweeter. The stems are really like crunchy and tender at the same time. So I picked out this milk bok choy, which looks most similar to the bok choy I like to buy. We'll see if it's really the same kind. I couldn't really tell from some of the photos, but it is supposed to have like the milky white stems. So yeah, this one is like a restock of one of my favorite crops, but a new variety. So I'm excited to try that one out. And I'm thinking I'm gonna plant a lot of that this spring. Next I have some eggplant seeds. These are the Ping Tung eggplants, which is a Taiwanese variety. This is the eggplant I would normally buy at the store if I was going to buy eggplant. Asian eggplants tend to be sweeter and not bitter like larger Italian eggplants are. And I do find that if I'm having a good year with them, because we do struggle with eggplants and flea beetles, but if we do have a good year, this kind of smaller diameter eggplants produce a lot more than the larger globe type eggplants. Usually for a globe type eggplant, I feel like I can only get like 2 or 3 fruits per plant versus like a kind of smaller and longer Asian eggplant. I can get like maybe 10 to 12 per plant, which is a pretty significant difference in performance. And I also just really like the way they taste. And yeah, I had run out of eggplant seeds from the plants I grew for the previous few years, which is unfortunate because they didn't have a variety name in English and I didn't know where to get them again. But I really liked that one because they were thornless plants, which if you didn't know, eggplant plants can be pretty thorny, both the stems and the leaves, and even like the stems of the plants, which is not my favorite thing. And I couldn't really find any info on if these have thorns or not, but we'll see. Hopefully they don't, or hopefully they're not too bad. Then for the next 2 seeds, I picked up some flowers because I do have some new plans for kind of like the layout of our garden this year. I'm really excited to show you guys, but things are going to be changing a little bit because I feel like for the last few years we kind of kept things a little simple and have not really changed too much, but this year I am really planning on switching things up a bit in the garden, and I have removed some of the plants that are in the middle of our raised bed garden where we had some blueberry bushes, and my plan for next year is to completely fill those 2 beds. They're just like smaller beds, like 2 by 3 feet, but I'm just gonna fill those up with just flowers. I'm just gonna make it a space where I'm not trying to like cram vegetables into every little nook and cranny and just make a space that's really pretty. I think it's going to be really nice because it's like the center pathway of our garden, so having 2 beds full of colorful flowers is going to be so nice. And in a way, this will give me more freedom to grow more vegetables in the other beds, because typically I like to like tuck in flowers at the end of every bed or kind of just like around the garden. But I feel like since I'll have like 2 full beds of flowers, I won't feel like I have to do that elsewhere, because this will be plenty to bring in lots of pollinators. So yeah, I'm really excited for that change in our garden. So I picked up 2 varieties of flowers so that I can fill each bed with one of these varieties, and they're both zinnias. So the first one is the Queen Lime Blush, which I guess I have grown these before in the past, or at least some other zinnias in the Queen Lime collection. I don't know if it was this one specifically, but I had only received a few seeds from like a friend. We did a seed swap. So yeah, I'm gonna do a whole packet of these. The Queen Lime varieties of zinnias are so pretty. They all kind of have like almost like an ombre effect within the flower. So like instead of one flower being like completely green or completely red, each of the petals kind of like fades, and they're really pretty. They have a more, I would say, like sophisticated color palette. They're not like really bright. A lot of them are not like super bright in your face, and I do really like that. So yeah, I think those are going to be really pretty, and also I think the flower heads are really large as well. And then kind of going in the opposite direction, I thought I would get this super colorful mix, and this one is the Scabiosa mix. And I like this one because they're kind of like the cupcake shape of zinnias. I've grown kind of like a cupcake shaped zinnia before that's called Cinderella Peach, but I have found that those ones don't perform very well. The flowers usually are like kind of small, and they're filled with a lot of bugs. So I thought I would try out this collection and see if they do a little bit better. And they come in much brighter colors. And usually bright colors are not what I choose for the garden. I always like to choose like white flowers or like pastel pink. But I do think that colorful flowers look really nice when they're in the garden. They're just not what I naturally gravitate towards. But I thought I would kind of like push myself a little bit, and I'm thinking that I'll do like the frontmost bed with these colorful flowers, so it'll be like a really nice pop of color first thing when you walk into the garden. So yeah, I'm excited for those 2 to bring some beauty into our vegetable garden. And then lastly, the rest of these seeds are all tomato seeds, which is super exciting. And I will admit that in the past, especially the last like 1 or 2 years, I have been so boring with tomatoes. I have really just focused on like production tomatoes and like canning and paste tomatoes. I just haven't really dedicated a lot of space to like larger heirloom colorful tomatoes. And I do always like to throw in a few like colorful tomatoes just to make it a little bit more fun and pretty when you have like a nice basket of tomatoes. But I would say generally I have grown 80% production tomatoes and only like 10 to 20% like the fun tomatoes that I know might not do so well but are beautiful and taste good. Not that the production tomatoes don't taste good, they still taste great, but there's something different about like a very beautiful, weird shaped heirloom tomato. And I'm still going to be growing lots of production tomatoes, but I already have all of those seeds, so I didn't need to buy any more of those. But what I thought this year is that we are going to be dedicating a lot of space to tomatoes, like more than we have in the past, because we're going to be switching things up in the garden, and I'm kind of like redoing the back area of our garden a little bit. We're going to be dedicating 2 whole rows to tomatoes, and I'm going to have cattle panels on both of those rows, so they're going to be about 16 feet long. And because we bought a truck last year, we can get more cattle panels to use for trellising, which has been an issue for us in the past. We weren't able to like go out and get those materials, but now that we can set up 2 trellises for our tomatoes, and I don't have to be limited by like only getting bush tomatoes that are shorter and don't need as much support. Now I am free to the world of indeterminate tomatoes, which honestly is most tomatoes that need a lot of tall support. So anyway, long explanation just to say that we are going to be trying out a lot of new tomatoes this year. And since I was planning out all of like the production tomatoes, I already have in my mind like how many of those I want, and I already have all the varieties picked out. I think that our row of heirloom tomatoes, I'm calling them heirloom tomatoes even though some of my production tomatoes are also heirloom tomatoes. When I say that, I just mean like the tomatoes you think of when you think of an heirloom tomato, if that makes sense. Like the ones that are funky shaped and are crazy colors, like that's what I'm talking about. So anyway, since those are almost like the bonus tomatoes in my mind, I figured I would just completely let go of the reins for that. And I pulled up the Baker Creek website to the tomato section, set it in front of Aaron, and I said, you pick whatever tomatoes you want to grow. And I just gave him full control of whatever varieties he wanted. So he actually chose all of these varieties. And when I asked him what his criteria was for choosing it, the first thing he said was he was looking at the photos. And again, Baker Creek has really beautiful photos of their tomatoes, so they really get you with those, and the photos really pull you in. So he picked like really beautiful tomatoes, but then after picking the ones that looked really good, he would go through and read the reviews, and then he would eliminate any tomatoes that did not perform really well. And he specifically was looking for tomatoes that performed really well in different tough conditions, especially in drought conditions. I think because last year we had such long periods of drought throughout the spring, summer, and fall, there were periods where we did not get rain for 1 to 2 months. And I think that was pretty tough for our garden because as much as you water, like it's not the same as getting rain. So that was one thing that was really on his mind, to have plants that would do well in those tougher, dry conditions. So yeah, that's what he was keeping in mind when he picked these varieties. So let's go through them and see what he picked out. The first one is called the Ananas Noir Tomato. This one I think is like the kind of most unique and colorful looking tomato of the ones that he chose. It's very like multicolored, almost like mottled. From the photo, it looks like they're green, yellow, orange, and red all in one tomato. It says they're super prolific and the fruit can get up to 1.5 pounds. So that one looks really cool. Next off, we have the Kellogg's Breakfast Tomato, which is a yellow tomato. And we have not really delved too much into the world of yellow tomatoes. And this is one that we've seen other people grow can get pretty large. And I think we've always been curious about that, seeing other people grow it. So it'll be nice to try it out for ourselves. And then we have another kind of like yellowish tomato. I guess this one's a little bit more orange, but this is called the Orange Peach Tomato. And this one sounded really interesting because it actually has a lightly fuzzy skin, which is why it's called an orange peach tomato. So it does kind of look like a peach, but people said the fuzzy skin didn't really bother them too much, so we just thought it sounded really interesting. Next we have the Abe Lincoln tomato, which is another larger tomato, and it's supposed to have a really good flavor. It also says it's good as a canning tomato, so that's a bonus for me. Next, he picked the Carbon tomato, which is kind of like a darker burgundy-ish tomato. I guess it's categorized technically as a purple tomato. And it says it has a complex flavor. Sorry, the light keeps going in and out. The sun keeps going behind the clouds, so it keeps changing here. Hopefully it's not too annoying. Let me just go ahead and close the curtains, BRB. All right, hopefully that is better. So moving on, next we have the Great White Tomato, and I'm pretty sure we've never grown a white tomato before. This one looks so interesting. It really is super white. Like, it's gonna be interesting to kind of figure out when it's ready to pick, just because it's not gonna like turn a very obvious shade of red. The description says it is giant sweet 1 pound slicers, deliciously fruity, reminiscent of fresh cut pineapple, melon, and guava. So it's a pretty cool description. Sounds like it has a very tropical flavor. And then the next one he chose is the Blue Cream Tomato, which is like a cherry tomato. It's smaller and it's like a mostly yellow tomato, but then kind of has purple around like the stem end. That one does look really pretty. And then actually these last two tomato packets I did choose. So these were my choices from what I saw. The first one is the Hungarian Heart Tomato, and this is actually going to be the tomato that I'm going to try out to use as one of my main preserving tomatoes. I'm going to be using this to replace Roma tomatoes, which I'm not going to be growing this year. And although this one isn't technically like a plum or paste tomato, I think it will kind of perform in a similar way. It says it's firm and meaty, but I think the size is much larger than plum tomatoes, so hopefully you won't need as many of them in order to like make the same amount of sauce or canned tomatoes. And they are supposed to perform really well, so I'm gonna try these instead of Romas this year. The only downside to growing these rather than other paste type tomatoes is that a lot of paste tomatoes are available in determinate varieties where you won't need a lot of staking, but this one is definitely one that you would need staking for. But since we will have that space and support, I think it will be a better use of my time and space to grow these instead of Roma tomatoes. Then the last tomato is the Raspberry Liana tomato. And this is kind of like a smaller tomato, but not quite a cherry tomato size, maybe like a saladette sized tomato. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And I just really liked the description of this one because it says that it's like a very flawless fruit. Each one is very smooth and similarly sized. They're supposed to keep on the counter and not have a lot of blemishes. So they're good for like, if you need to cut up a bunch of tomatoes to preserve, it's really easy because you don't have to cut out a lot of bad spots of the tomato. So that's why I chose that one. And with that, those are all of the new varieties of tomatoes that we chose for this year, which I'm so excited about. I think this is probably the main thing that I am the most excited about for the garden this year, just because we have not really gone too crazy with our tomatoes in the last few years. I think we do actually grow a lot of varieties of tomatoes each year, but even though it's a lot of different varieties, a lot of times they end up just looking the same because I grow a lot of red tomatoes that are all kind of a similar size. When you put them all together, they're not that interesting. But I think that this selection of tomatoes in size, color, patterns, shapes, it's gonna be a really nice, fun selection of tomatoes. So I'm so excited to try those out this year. And those are all of the seeds that I purchased from Baker Creek. But I do have one other part of the haul which I am very excited for. And this haul actually is not even from like officially a seed company, at least not in the way that we think about it. This is a box of beans that I ordered from Rancho Gordo. I've got a nice big heavy box of beans here that I'm so excited for. And if you are big in the world of like cooking or beans like I am, you will have heard of Rancho Gordo. They are just famous for their beans and how good and fresh and just like the variety of beans. And they're a company that I have admired from a distance for a few years and have just been like waiting for the day to order some of their beans. Because for beans, they are relatively expensive, maybe like $6 to $8 for a pound of beans. But in the end, I was just like, why not? I may as well spend the money on something that is fun and also you eat it. So like, it's not really a waste of money anyway. But just to push it over the edge, I also justified it to myself. And I figured that these are beans that we're going to eat, but for each of the packets, I'm going to reserve a handful of beans and I'm going to pick the favorites of the ones that we try and we're gonna try growing them. When I was on the website looking at the descriptions of the beans, some of them do actually tell you like what kind of plant it grows as, like if you do try and plant them. Even though they're not really a seed company, they're not like selling you these beans to grow them. Some of them do have that information, which I think is nice. And also when I was going through the website and looking at like the pictures or the names of the beans, I did recognize some of them as beans that you can buy at like a seed company. For example, they sell Scarlet Runner beans. We actually grew Scarlet Runner beans last year and we didn't grow enough to eat, but they are a bean that you can shell and eat the beans of, and they were just selling them as like beans for people to eat. So I definitely think that these beans will be viable as seeds to grow into plants. And it's kind of a no-brainer if you think about it that way then, because this pound of beans, if it was $6, like I could go to a seed company and get a packet of beans that would have like 20 to 40 beans in there, and that would already be $4. And now I have like hundreds of beans in this packet. And then we also get to eat the rest of them. So yeah, anyway, I think that is a really good deal and it's gonna be something really fun. So I'm gonna go over the varieties of beans that I chose out. I have 8 different varieties here and I think I'm planning on growing 4 varieties of dried beans in the garden. That will kind of fill the space that I have planned for them. So out of these 8 varieties, we're gonna choose 3 or 4 that we like the flavor of most. So we're gonna have to eat all of these before we choose which ones we want to grow. And then I do have a couple other varieties that I already have seeds for as well. So I can't really speak to like what these are going to taste like because I haven't tried them yet, but I will show you the variety that I picked out because there is such like a vast array of sizes, shapes, and colors in these beans, and they're just so beautiful. And I never really thought I would be the type of person that's like gushing over beans, but I cannot even explain to you how excited I am. And I was just stalking this package for like days waiting for it to arrive at our doorstep. So let's get into it, starting off with the bean that I think I am the most excited for. This is the Christmas Lima bean. And this bean is really beautiful. It's like kind of white, but has some like burgundy modeling or striping on it. It's kind of a larger size. It is a lima bean. And this bean, when I was reading the reviews of it, like it just had to be in my cart. I had to try it out for myself. The descriptions that people were saying was that it was like a meaty bean, and not just in texture, but like it tasted like meat. And every single review that I was going through was like people just having their minds blown with like how delicious and meaty this bean was. And I just had to know what the hype was about, and I just have to try it out for myself. So that's definitely one that I'm very interested in. If it's as good as people say, I think that's definitely a contender for one that we will try to grow, because it is a larger size. So I think that will make shelling a lot easier, and it will also be really fun to see like larger pods filled with those beans. Speaking of big beans, this is the Royal Corona bean, which I think is the largest bean that they offer, and definitely the largest bean I've ever seen. It's massive. It's like at least an inch long, and this is uncooked. So when it's cooked, it's gonna be like 1.5 to 2 inches long. They're just so massive. And it does say that they are a runner bean. So they probably grow very similarly to the scarlet runner bean. So it's nice to kind of have an idea of like what kind of plant it's gonna be. So yeah, those were just really interesting, and I'm so excited to see how big they're gonna be when I cook them. Next, I have the Ayocote Morado bean. This bean's kind of purpley. To be honest, I don't really remember the description of it because I read the description of like 20 kinds of beans, so I can't remember each of them right now. But I'm sure I picked it because it said that it tasted good. Next, I have the Domingo Rojo bean, which I think I'm gonna try using this kind of like as you would red beans, kind of a la like red beans and rice, or maybe I'll put them in some gumbo. So that's gonna be my plan for this one. Next, I have the Buckeye bean. This is like a tan colored bean. And to be honest, it does look pretty boring. It's just like one color, and it's like kind of a smaller bean, but I chose this one because it did say on the website that this is like an employee favorite, and I know that it's not always about the looks. Even if it doesn't look interesting, it could still taste really good. So since it was recommended like by the employees and they all say that they like it, I figure it has to be a good bean, so I'm gonna try it out. Next, there is the cranberry bean, and this one definitely looks like one that I've seen like sold as a seed at seed companies. But sometimes I've noticed that like what they call the bean at Rancho Gordo could be different from what a seed company calls it. So sometimes even if you're like looking for the same bean, they could be called different things. I'm going based off appearance. These do look like a bean that I've seen before, and it says it's ideal for pasta fajoule. So I think this one is going to be another one that tastes good and will be a contender for growing. Next, I have the Rebocero bean. Again, I don't really remember what I read about this one. They kind of look like a pinto bean, so maybe that's how I would use it. They're like a little bit darker than pinto beans that I've seen, though. They're like a darker gray brown color, but that's kind of what they remind me of. And then lastly, I have the Vaquero bean. These ones are gorgeous. They are black and white, kind of like speckly. They look really crazy. It says it's a classic chili bean that holds its shape and exudes a dark, rich broth. So yeah, really cool looking. I really just bought this one because it was really interesting looking. I don't even remember what it said about what it tastes like, but they're beautiful. So that is my Rancho Gordo order that I am very excited to share with you all, and I'm very excited to eat. I think we're gonna try out the Christmas limas tomorrow, so we'll see how that goes. I'm super excited, and some of these beans will be destined to be grown in our garden. We're gonna try it out. So yeah, kind of like an untraditional addition to this seed haul, but those are all of the new varieties that I picked out to grow for this coming gardening year. Let me know what things you're like trying to grow for the first time this year that you're excited for. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video and this seed haul. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.